Okay, welcome back everyone. So here we are in Notepad++, and we are looking at a typical text stamp that you're going to see within product templates. Now again, this is not the whole template file that you would normally see. This is just a portion of it so we can demonstrate some of the XML things that we've talked about in the previous slide. So one of the first things you'll notice here is we have a stamps element. And that stamps element contains a few child elements. Now the first one is this text stamps element. And that text stamps element, which exists inside of stamps, has another element called text. And that text element has 4 attributes for format string, font, font size, and color. Now when you're working within an XML editor, or any editor that is XML aware, there's some cool things that can really help you when you're working with the XML files and trying to diagnose and troubleshoot issues that may come up. The first thing you'll notice is if I click on one of these element names, the editor knows, because of this leading /, it knows that the closing tag for my stamps opening tag up here is this element, or this element piece. So if I highlight the text stamps element, it shows me the closing tag element. Now again, that comes in really handy for troubleshooting, and we'll take a look at a few things related to that here in a second. Within inside this text stamps, the text stamps element, we have our text element. And notice when I highlight the text element, because this element has one or more attributes associated with it, the XML editor knows to highlight all of the attributes that's associated with this text element. Now in this case, like I mentioned earlier, we have a format string, which is just text that's going to display hello world. We have a font that we're defining, saying to use Arial. We're having a font size of 12, and the color that we are specifying is black. So now, we've seen this before. We talked about in the PowerPoint the different structure, and we can see that laid out here. Now what happens if, through editing or copy paste or whatever, we say forgot to use the / in stamps? That makes this XML file invalid. Now depending upon how or what version of Notepad++ I have, when I go to save this file, it might tell me that the XML file is invalid. So we'll go ahead and try that. See, and it does. It tells us that there is an XML parsing error on line 12. Now, the reason it's saying line 12 and not line 10, which is where the error is actually at, is because I have 2 additional blank lines. So it's going right to the end of the file, calling the error on line 12. If we get rid of that error, we'll come up here, and we'll get rid of those 2 lines. Again, this is where the error is. And notice too that when I click on, or try to click on stamps, it no longer highlights like it was doing before. So if we come up here and we try to save, get that same XML parsing error on line 10, which is where the error is actually at. So that's one type of error that can come up. So we'll go ahead and put our / back in there. And now you'll notice that with that element highlighted, it now lights up both of them again like we saw before. So now we can save that, and no issues with saving the file. So the next thing that I want to show you, let's go ahead and this time we'll go ahead and remove a quote. So let's say we forgot to put an ending quote on the font size. Come up here and try to save that. And again, we'll get an XML parsing error on line 7. And sure enough, line 7 is the line after our error. And the reason for that, in this case, is because by removing that quote, it invalidated the rest of this, meaning it couldn't find the closing tag down here, which made this opening tag for text invalid. So we'll go ahead and close that. And let's take and copy this, and we're going to see what one of the online validation tools does when we paste this XML into it. So we'll come up here, and I'm just going to do a search for XML validation tools. So here we have XML parser invalidation, Smart Fix. I'm just going to go really basic and do the XML validation on W3 schools. So we'll come down here, see if we can find it. So we'll paste in our XML, and then we'll say check XML. And sure enough, it says the page contains the following errors. Error on line 7 at column 20. So it tells us right again where the error is at, just like Notepad++ did. So we'll go ahead and put our quote back around the 12, and then save it, make sure that our XML file is valid. And that's all there is to it. And there we have a very basic XML structure that shows a text stamp and all of its attributes and associated values.